Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have 4 students from Ukraine who will be talking about their experiences since the war was started by the Russians. We have Valeriia Horobets, Marta Hnat, both students from the Franko University of Lviv. We have Yaroslav Masnyuk, who is the student of Khmelnytskyi University in Kremerchuk, and Vadim Sklarov, student of Lviv Polytechnic National Universities. Over to you, Valeriia Horobets.
The 21st century has always seemed to be a century of democracy and progress. But not all nations have progressed as one organism. War is a world familiar to everyone, but not everyone has seen the war and may not know what it is and how to live with it. But Ukrainians today know for sure. 1.5 months ago, the Russian Federation invaded our country. And the consequences of ruthless impotence you can see now. We thank all the mass media that shows the unbiased truth about the war in Ukraine. But people who still hide behind the terms that it is a military conflict or a military operation are cowards. Do you know the number of civilians killed? Or maybe you counted all the crippled refugees from hell on earth. The number of victims is growing daily, while the number of killed and tortured is growing every hour. I want to show you what makes me cry, what makes the blood freeze, what is left after the Russian military in the cities of Bucha, Irpin, Gostomel, Kyiv region. On the 3rd of April, all news pages added information about the liberation of Kyiv region. The text was accompanied by photos, after which the psyche of the people simply could not withstand the pressure. Russia's executioners committed genocide. They didn't just kill, they raped, tortured, murdered people. Among the remains of human bodies found, it was established that all males from 16 to the oldest were killed. All women are raped and tortured. And the bodies of girls under the age of 10 have traces of violence, their genitals torn due to rape. Russia denies all the facts and accuses us of creating fakes, but they will not be able to hide the truth from the world for long. Everyone has already heard that the Russians bring with them mobile crematoria. They did not bring them for their soldiers, as we thought. They brought them to cover up war crimes committed against people, to hide the committed genocide in Kyiv region. These people burned citizens in their homes, cars, and on the street. They caught men, tied their hands so they would not resist, and shoot them in the head. They kidnapped little girls and raped for 10 to 13 people each. Children died of pain and torture. The Russian military dug up mass graves to hide the corpses of tortured Ukrainians. Brutal murders. Ordinary people are not capable of that. This requires psychological disorders. The Russian army hoped that we would not meet them with bread, not armed resistance. We should not assume that we are defending our country from foolish and incapable invaders. We are defending our country from the second army of the world, from an army with good weapons and a large number of troops. We protect not only ourselves, but the whole world. How many women have been raped in Europe in 1 year and in months? In Ukraine, this figure is growing indefinitely. Imagine a man from Bucha joins the armed forces of Ukraine. He returns to the liberated city and sees the ruins of his house. His daughter was tied up and raped a dozen times. His son was beaten to death so that his father could not recognize his face. His wife came under fire and did not survive. Or a guy who left the house, a Russian soldier approached him and shot him in front of his mother. The mother's heart could not stand it. Yesterday, volunteers received a request from Bucha: do not give baby food. Almost all the children were killed. In Mariupol, the girl was tortured to death. The Russian burned a swastika on her back. Are you ready to keep quiet about it? Are you ready to stay neutral? Who was silent when Hitler ordered the establishment of concentration camps? Who would be willing to say that that was just a conflict? Ukraine is blocking Russia. We stand by the wall so that Europe can go out for coffee in the morning or spend another day at work for a stable world economy. In Ukraine, if Ukraine falls, the whole world will fall. Don't be so sure that there will be no nuclear war tomorrow. The man who leads Russia has lived his life. Putin doesn't care when he dies, but we are fighting to the death for life. Our military have become angels of death for those who want to take over our country. For us, our military are guardian angels who guard our sleep. We must pray for the souls of the dead who have suffered the most horrible sins in their lives. The Russians must answer for everything they have done, for every killed, burned alive, raped, tortured, torn apart Ukrainian. They must answer for everything they have done. And if they are not stopped now, what is the probability that they will not do the same with other nations of the world? My life will never be the same. I have twice witnessed explosions in my city. For the first time, police demanded saboteur bombs. The second is a missile strike on an oil depot located in the neighboring area. Dwelling houses were built around it. Windows and batteries flew in the nearest ones. The windows in my house kept the blast wave. A total of 9 missiles were fired, 2 of which the air defense and fighters were unable to shoot down. The wreckage of the second rocket hit the market and harmed private entrepreneurs. My city is a military facility. By damaging civilians' infrastructure, Russians are encroaching on civilians. Since the beginning of the war, my family have been helping the army, volunteers, and IDPs. In addition to financial aid, my dad and I provided the military with gasoline generators and lighting, food and water, mattresses and metal barriers to the roads, and components for a Molotov cocktail. Now I'm helping with an information project, writing news about the war. My main goal is to show the world what is happening in Ukraine. Only the truth without censorship. In the 21st century, there is no place for genocide or violence as high as Russians have. Every Ukrainian seeks only peace and tranquility in his native land. We have never encroached on others. We just want to regain what we lost and finally unite the country. Glory to Ukraine.
Unfortunately, the history of the war in Ukraine already has many tragic stories. And with each new photo, video, story, our inner fear increases. The only question that Ukrainians ask themselves today is why? Why do children, women, men, and elderly die? Why are cities and architectural monuments being destroyed? Why do happy families experience grief and hatred now, while they used to be happy before? This question has captured our lives. After Russia's attack on Ukraine, our history has changed rapidly and significantly. We have brought to the whole world and we can defend our country ourselves, and we are ready to fight to the last to stop this bloody war. We have united not only our people, but also the people of many countries which help us with food, money and shelter, for defense weapons and machinery. We have also changed our values and life priorities. Now we have only one wish for all, for the war to end and peace to come. Not only men and women took up arms, but also grandparents who gave their lives to help our army. We will never be the same until again be February 24. Our lives have changed forever. The stories of Bucha, Irpin, and Gostomel are examples of the true genocide of the Ukrainian people in the 21st century. Tortured, raped, murdered people, including children, are a tragedy that will forever be remembered by the world. The genocide perpetrated by the Russians in Ukraine may be the largest in Europe since World War II. I want to tell a few stories that will show how cruel and unjustified war is. I'm sleeping to a diet man. I'm a widow at 25. My life was stolen by Russia. This is how Irina described her own feelings after she lost a husband. He was 30. He was an officer of the Ukrainian Air Defense Forces and was killed while performing a combat missions in the Sumy. Before that, he managed to shoot down a deadly rocket and save dozens and maybe hundreds of lives of Ukrainians. Here is direct speech from his wife. I have now what eyes our children will have. I have long figured out what to give you for our first wedding anniversary. And I had to choose a verse to the grave. In our last conversation, you said you were guarding my sleep. Now I preserve yours for the rest of my life. Mariupol has been under fire from the Russian occupiers for almost a month now. The city continues to defend itself, despite most of the buildings being damaged or destroyed. Volunteer Vera Hus told the story of 60-year-old Katya from Mariupol and her brother. Direct speech. You know the feeling wet in hearts. I once fell in love with a boy, but he didn't, and I thought it hurt. And it turned out that it hurts to see your mother die in front of you. And brother, everyone's up to here and says, Mommy, don't sleep, you will freeze. And we will never get to her grave. She remained in the damp and dark basement. And once our uncle got a pigeon, it was probably the 5th or 6th day, and we fried it and ate it. And then we all vomited. My mother held on to the last. She died 3 days before our evacuation. I told my brother that she was fast asleep and shouldn't be woken up. But he seems to have understood everything, understood when our neighbor died, and we couldn't stand here, and she began to smell. Corpses stink so much. They were everywhere. I closed my brother's eyes with my mother's scarf so that he wouldn't see it. While we were running, I almost vomited several times. I don't believe in your God anymore. If he were, we wouldn't suffer so much. My mother has never, you hear, ever done anything wrong. This is just a part of this tragic story, a story that ruined the lives of these children forever. These are the consequences of the actions of the Russian Federation. This is the responsibility of all Russians. Another story from Irpin about a woman who lost everything. On the night of March 8, a shell hit our house. My mother was there. There is only one window left. My life story was destroyed. I don't have any items or photos to take with me, and worst of all, my mother's. Our Ukrainian women and mothers and daughters have repeatedly appealed and still appeal to Russian mothers not to send their sons to their deaths. But there is no chance to be heard. Olena Zelenska asked those mothers, how do you feel when your sons kill our children? I was recently asked if I cried during the war. Yes, I'm crying. When I see, for example, a grave in the yard of an ordinary residential complex, there is a homemade plate on each, mom, son, and dates. This is how neighbors bury the died under constant shelling in our cities. Russian mothers need to know what they are sending their sons to do in Ukraine. As you know, the issue of the Ukrainian language with the state language has been actively raised in Ukraine for several years. If before February 24, someone allowed himself to be indifferent to this issue, today our language has become a real weapon. Many people have posted on social media with the caption, "Now I speak only Ukrainian." Our language has become the weapon that everyone in the world has spoken about. It has become a key element in the fight against Russia's fundamental policies. The population began to understand better. If you are Ukrainian, you have speak Ukrainian. The war, despite all its grief, reminded people of their roots and the importance of respecting their own language, culture, and traditions. All the stories are full of pain, grief, sadness. These feelings overwhelm every Ukrainian. We continue to defend our own interests at the international level, so that representatives of different countries should implement even tougher sanctions so that Russia is punished as much as possible for all the crimes committed by the Russian military on our territory. They must be responsible for every life lost and tried. In Ukraine, the word I no longer exists. There is only we, because we have proved to everyone that we are one nation and no one will ever be able to overcome us. I end my story with children's drawings, and I want to wish that no child in the war has ever drawn a war. I believe that victory will be ours as soon as possible. We will rebuild our country and economy. We believe that our children will live in a free and independent country where we will not hear sirens anymore, where there will be no explosions, no more killings, no more wars. Thanks for your attention.
Valeriia and Marta for a very illuminating and informative presentation. And now we will move to the presentation of Yaroslav.
The revolution of dignity, when our compatriots literally fought for their freedom and better life, showed Vladimir Putin how a willful people can make a stand against the incompetent government which leads its country to decline. Yanukovych, a Putin's puppet, was the black page of our history, and now we know him as a ludicrous and corrupted president who fled to Russia. Soon afterwards, the war began. Back then, I was a 12-year-old boy, and all my world collapsed. I couldn't believe the country which I recently considered as friendly became so hostile to us. From this moment, all legends about fraternal peoples were shattered, and the real face of Russia revealed. Watching the mess happening in Ukraine, Putin began to commit his war crimes against our country. While the army of Ukraine was literally disarmed in 2014, he took a cunning opportunity to occupy Crimea and create so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, using his separatists and terrorists. However, the people of Ukraine weren't ready to give up so easily. In 2014-2015 years, during the active battles in Donetsk and Luhansk regions, their brutal and heroic response stopped Putin from further conquest. A ridiculous propaganda on TV was his next aggressive move, which many inhabitants of Russia believed in. Despite Russian parliament approved troop deployment in Ukraine on the 1st of March in 2014, Putin claimed that there was no Russian invasion in Ukraine, but Ukraine's civil war. The propaganda has been showing that there is no Ukrainian people, all its patriots are Nazis, and Ukraine is a bridgehead of USA to invade Russia without being a NATO member even. As we can see it now, NATO fears Putin more than Putin fears NATO. Putin decided somehow to save us from so-called Nazism and restore so-called friendly relations. But that meant only the destruction of Ukrainian culture and the appropriation of its territories. At the beginning of the invasion on February 24, our Western allies were sure in Ukraine's fall and weren't going to levy tough preventive sanctions. However, corruption, disorder, and soldiers' unwillingness to die on a foreign land without any significant reason broke their plans to take our lands under control in a few days. The world has seen a real national liberation war, which a strong and willful Ukrainian people is going to win due to its patriotism and impressive tactics. The efficiency of territorial defense also deserves credit for helping our army as partisans and catching Russian soldiers who trying to escape after taking casualties. All of us witnessed how Putin arranged a small victorious war, yet this war was the step to his own doom. Unfortunately, there have been many crimes Putin committed against his own people. After 22 years of robbing them, Russia's standard of living became so terrible that under the weight of poverty, people couldn't think outside the box. Many of their towns look like they were launched some missile attacks. 1/3 of its people don't have gas in their houses, as well as water closets or roads. Though we should keep in mind that the inhabitants of these territories have been slaves under the rule of their Tsar for hundreds of years. Little has changed since. Dreams of enslavement, lying, conquest, and pillaging remained their values. They are used to living poorly, and they think that the sanctions will not affect them in any way. They were ready to easily give up the benefits of civilization and loudly declared that they would arrange mass import substitution. Now, little by little, they are getting ready to eat stew from leftovers according to the old Soviet recipe. It also turned out that they do not have their own spare parts to revive the domestic auto industry. There was information that Shoigu had disappeared because he was negotiating with North Korea about missiles for further warfare. They claim so-called special operation is going according to plan, though his great Orthodox people are hiring Islamic terrorists whose corpses are already lying on our lands. They are mired in hypocrisy and lies. Nothing will wash them away from shame. The most savage thing is that Russians will wish death to Ukrainians. They hate Europeans, Americans, and people of other nations and races, though most of them cannot even imagine their lives without all those things that come from civilized world, like iPads, foreign-made cars, brand clothes, McDonald's food, and so on. Those who do not want to put up with their savagery, they call Russophobes. And now we see all these barbaric actions as the terrible outcome of their internal policy and heritage. Our chances of success in this war multiply with the support of the West countries in terms of supplying weapons, humanitarian aid, and funds. But it is worth saying that their fear of Putin's evil empire is unjustified. Look at their slowness in action, anxiety, and horrific statements, like after the retreat of the Russian forces, a lot of anti-human crimes on temporary occupied territories of Ukraine will be revealed. How are they going to defend the values of democracy and civilization if they are so slow to act and do something only when they see massacres of innocents? Moreover, it does not fit in my head how some European countries like Greece, Germany, and Israel can indulge fascism in this difficult time. How dare they allow any pro-Russian meetings and car rallies? Why do people of civilized countries agree with Putin's crimes? How can their governments agree? Never again, they said, after the World War II. And what do we see now? I hope the authorities take actions and forbid anything like this. Now I want to tell you the story that happened to me on the second day of the invasion. I went to the blood transfusion station in order to do something to help our brave soldiers, and I was pleasantly surprised seeing that happening there. The blood transfusion station was open from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the doctors overfilled the daily norm for taking blood in 2 hours, and were sending people home. The next day, I decided to visit the station again, but this time I arrived half an hour before opening. There was already a huge line, which increased to 80 people by 9:30 a.m. People were so many that the doctors could not take blood from everyone. Negative rhesus factor was given a priority, as it was rarer. Rhesus positive people were asked to go home if the number of blood negative donors increased. However, the doctors were taking donors' phone numbers and asking them to indicate their blood type so that the doctors could call them if the blood was needed. Unfortunately, I never donated blood during these 42 days because I have positive rhesus factor and they didn't even call me. Their blood reserves are enough. That makes me both upset and proud of our selfless people. There was an old woman who, due to her old age, was not supposed to be a donor, but still she was asking the doctors to take her blood, as she couldn't contribute to help in this terrible struggle by other means. It really impressed me. The help of anyone is significant. In the end, I would like to tell you how Poltava region is going. The invaders launched rocket attacks on Poltava and Kremenchuk and hit some objects of infrastructure. Kremenchuk oil refinery stopped its work. The firefighters had been working on extinguishing the fire for 2 days. There were no victims nor death. Yesterday, there was an information that our air defense shot down 2 missiles in Poltava region. But despite of this, the Poltava region remains a reliable rear that provides shelter for refugees, supplies humanitarian aid, and holds back the country's economy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, Yaroslav, for a very informative presentation. And now we will move to Vadim. Could you please continue?
Living under fire. Repeat changes after the Russian attack on Ukraine. I want to start from the face of Ukraine. This is face of our President Zelensky before the war and after Bucha 3rd March to 1st April this year. Russian soldiers occupied many cities around the Kyiv, such as Bucha, Irpin, Rostomel, Makariv, and Borodin. Russian troops tortured and raped many women, children, and men. It is also called Bucha Mess. More than 420 civilians passed away. History repeats itself. Berlin after Second World War, Georgia, Chechnya, and now Ukraine. They blockaded Ukraine, Mariupol. We don't know what is happening there now, but we can assume that the situation is worse than other cities in Ukraine. There are still 100,000 civilians. They are killing our future. At least 166 civilians were killed and 266 injured. This is our cost for our freedom to Europe Union. This is photos from Bucha also. We are invisible. Our president said until our women are giving birth in shelters, we are invisible. The world support us. Nowadays, there are a lot of demonstrations all over the world which support us. And now we can see who our friend and who will never be. Unfortunately, war took away childhood from Ukrainian children, and they have to live underground. But we also don't forget about animals, because they also suffer from war, and they live with us and fight. Thanks for your attention, and all will be Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Vadim, corresponding secretary and the host for this program, Susie Halak, and she will ask the questions that we have received, and you will answer them as well as you can. Over to you, Susie.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the presentation. So informative and such a relevant topic given the current landscape. Our first question from our audience are, as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, most of the cities where active hostilities are taking place were destroyed. And among the destroyed buildings and architectural monuments, the cultural heritage of our country is also being destroyed. What do you think? Should the aggressor allocate funds for the reconstruction of these facilities after its defeat separately, or will greater financial investments be required? Valeriia, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I want to answer because we don't need help from Russia. We can do it by ourselves because I think our heritage is our heritage, not them. So we can do it by ourselves.
And do you think the losses will be calculated and then distributed within the country is the second part of the question?
I think they can give it back to us, like in money, without help, without physical help, only financial.
Okay, thank you. The second question from the audience is, Ukrainians who are safe now see photos from other Ukrainian cities and are reading scary stories of people who were able to evacuate. And sometimes this information causes distress among those who are safe. So how do you think we can help people who have survived these horrors but are now experiencing maybe PTSD, guilt, fear, given what their neighbors are experiencing? What can we do from a psychological perspective to help? Marta, do you want to take this one?
Yes, you're right. That is all of us need psychological help because it's very hard, and we need a long time that we back to our field back to after the war, and now I think we don't anything because war not in the end. And and every day we saw a lot of photos, videos, and every day stories stay so terrible, and we only hope on the future, that only the future we change our mind, our feelings, and we have another choice. It's only time.
Yeah. Point. Similar to my parents, I mentioned, lived through the war in Lebanon, and it's just been time to help them heal from all the tragedies that they've encountered. So I understand your point. So could you, if maybe we can go with all three speakers for this question, could you please tell us about your emotions on the morning of February 24th, and how did you know the war had started?
In morning, my girlfriend was called me, and I think it's just a joke. I didn't understand what. I went to my mother's, asked what happened, and the next I heard is plane, and I think it only the rain first my emotion. I started to do what I need to do. I don't know.
Marta, did you want to go next?
May I?
Or thank you, Valeriia.
Yes, my mom woke me up at maybe 7 o'clock, and she was totally keeping calm, and she said that the war begins. I don't panic. I just keeping calm too. We pack our backpacks with documents, some cash, medicine, but we also knew that it will take a long time for war to go in our town. So we were calm. But now we know that every day is like every day is in stress, because we also have two attacks in our city, and everything that I want to say that we will win this game because we know the truth.
Thank you. Marta, did you want to go next?
Yes, I remembered the day of all my life because my family and I woke up that a rocket flew our house, and it was very scareful. We were shocked, and when we watched TV, they said that Russia's attack Ukraine. It was a terrible minutes of our life, and I still think that it's a nightmare, and we will be asleep soon because every day we give different news. Sometimes is good, sometimes is bad, and you don't know if you will wake up tomorrow because it's your life still for a very big question if you will believe. And we hope that the war will be end very soon, and only all Ukrainians wish all the people in the world only peace, and the children never don't know what is war, and we stand strong, and this story in our world no one forget because it is tragic for all people in the world.
Thank you so much for your powerful reflections. The next question is, what environmental impacts of the war are you witnessing firsthand, if any?
Russians destroy all zoos that were in Kyiv region, in Mariupol, and also destroy forests, parks, the places where were a lot of endangered animals from Ukraine. So this impact is huge, and exactly I don't know how we can replace these animals and how we can help them survive, because only that we can do is to help them to grow and rebuild all those they destroyed.
Thank you. So what do you think young people in Ukraine need to be prepared for the most in the near future?
I think that we should be ready to be a part of our military, of our army, because all of us are soldiers of our country. And in a way, war came in my town. I want to stay with boys and girls who will be fighting for Ukraine, fighting for my town, because this is my land, and I was born here, so I want to end my life here.
Yep, it's your country. Are you volunteering or helping the army?
Yes, I'm volunteering. I'm helping with my dad. I said it in my speech, and I'm also writing news for informational for projects. Yes, for our side. Maybe Marta will add something about volunteering.
Yes, we have one project in our university. This is information project about the war in Ukraine, and everyone who wants to watch we have in Ukraine now can read it, can see it and understand what our people feel and how terrible it is. Because if we know in Russians media don't show truth information, that they have a lot of disinformation, fake, and it is in the other side. We can't understand that in this way we can help other people to share this information, that all the people in the world show what is war is it, and help us, everyone, because we need a lot of money, weapons, shelter. Our children now it's abroad to Ukraine, and it's hard. And I think in this way we can information about all what happened in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. Vadim, are you volunteering or helping the army?
I only happening with money, with the DOS attack for Russia websites or service. I also want to give my blood, but they don't need. Many people want to give, and I want to volunteer, but they don't. But they have more people, and I don't need for them in my city.
Thank you. Yaroslav, what about you?
Of course, I've given our troops, our soldiers, a financial support, and I'm not going to stop on this. Our family is baking bread every day and supporting the humanitarian supply for other regions and the towns.
Are you planning to go abroad to a safe place?
No. No.
That seems like a unanimous response. The next question from the audience is, in your opinion, how can we establish better horizontal communication about the war between people of Ukraine and Western nations?
Demonstration, support, and Ukraine needs more weapons. They can help us and defeat us, but we can also give us more weapons to save our people, our children.
Unfortunately, I think that West countries will never understand what are we suffering here under this missile attacks. They are countless. Nobody can imagine what is to stay in the cellar for a few days without electricity, water, in total panic. So it cannot be told or shown by any pictures, by any words.
What would be your
in
message to Western governments and citizens?
Stop fearing Putin and stop supporting pro-Russian meetings as they did in Israel, Greece, and Germany on Sunday or Saturday.
Thank you. The next question from the audience is, who is best positioned to help make the most impact in Ukraine and ultimately stop the war, in your opinion? Marta, Valeriia, did you want to respond to this one?
I think best way is to end up the war is to stop Putin, because I think he doesn't know what have he done, because I think He hasn't seen those photos and videos, and Russians don't believe that their soldiers done that things on our land, in our country. So everything that we can do is to stop Putin, because he's leader of his country, and he's the only button we can tap.
Thank you. When do you think Russia will accept its defeat and end the violence in Ukraine?
I think never. Historically, Russia, every moment of history, Russia killed us. Because Russia feels like they are kings, and they don't understand that we are also people. They think that we are animals. They don't understand that we can talk to them, and they talk to us. They want to kill all of us because they think that we want to kill them. And that's not true, because Ukraine never wants to kill nobody, except but Russia wants. So we can stop this because of their anger, and that's all. That's all.
Thank you for that perspective. Yaroslav, did you have anything to add?
No, I have the same idea. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Russians are by nature barbarians. Their war looks like a typical European war happening in the medieval ages. So this is the war for plundering, for conquering the lands, but they are not thinking about how to hold these lands. And soon, I think their Russian empire is gonna break.
Thank you. The next question is, do you think Russia will be punished for the crimes against civilians in Ukraine? Maybe we can turn to either Vadim or Marta for this one.
In my opinion, Russia don't want to back crime to Ukraine, but all Ukrainians know that crime is over, and now we have a chance to back our territory, and I hope we will done it.
Thank you, Marta. Vadim, anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a difficult question because our president said if we want to back the Crimea, our thousand men and women will dead. Not only the army, the civilians. It's not, and we don't have enough weapons for recapture, occupy the Crimea. It's my opinion.
Thank you, guys. The next question is, despite all of the horror and tragedies discussed today, what gives you hope and helps you look toward a brighter future after the war is finally over? Maybe we can go around. Yaroslav, would you like to go first?
Well, as the history shows, time is a good healer. And still we can hope that Russians can rehabilitate from all those crimes. They will pay us reparations. Some of their people will rebuild our towns. Though the hate of Ukrainians and the whole world, civilized world, to Russians is not going to fade so soon. Many hated Germans for Nazism, for a few decades, and only by 28th year they paid all the reparations for the World War First.
Thank you. Vadim, would you like to go next?
Okay, I agree with Yaroslav. Our history represents that Russians don't want to give us. They want us. They want to. Ukraine will be a part of their empire, not Ukraine. How they said, Malorussia, like this.
Thanks. Valeriia, would you like to go next?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Despite all of the horror and tragedies discussed today, what gives you hope and helps you look toward a brighter future after the war is finally over?
So my family helps me to live on, because I hide all my tears, not to scare them, because they trust me as a journalist. And we will not forgive or forget Russians all that they have done to our country, but also we can rebuild our country from zero. Those cities that, as Mariupol or Bucha or Borodyanka also, but we just don't want Russians beyond our land, in our country, because when somebody do something like that, I can't explain how hard it is to see those things and to hear those stories from my relatives, because those are awful things, and everything that we have done now is to pray, only pray, and to believe in our army, Ukrainian army.
Thank you. Marta, would you like to go next?
Yes, I want to say that we never recover from this tragedy, and it's true that Russia will never really be held accountable for its action in full, and we will never return our killed children, women, men, and our military. And a lot of people lost their lives. And I want to say one phrase that no amount of money is worth a human death, because life, our life is very important for our families, for our friends, and no wars can't save. And I want to say that war is terrible, and Ukrainian never understand Russian people first, because Russian people, it's a lot amount of people that live in this country, and they don't say anything. They don't anything, and I think that we never be friendly with their. And I think our history very good look this, and I hope the peace will be very soon, and we hope that we can to return for our lives.
Thank you all for your insightful responses and genuine reflections. We have our last question that we'd like a response from each of you as well. Do you think that the United Nations should remove Russia from the Security Council, since they completely ignored the UN Charter that they signed when the UN was begun? So we could just go around to get your opinions on that to wrap up the seminar. Valeriia, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course. First of all, we thank all countries that support us, because without your help, the situation will be worse than it is. So I think United Nations can help us. They are helping now. So with this help, we can handle everything, and we can do anything, and also stop Russia. With all military that United Nations gave us, with all financial help, with all of help that you done, we can stop it, and we can, as I said, we can do everything.
Marta, would you like to go next?
I think if we were not supported by other countries, we would have lost a long time ago, and Ukraine would not exist now. It's a truth, and only I just want to thank for everything countries which support us, to help us, people that give shelter our people. Our people, thanks for weapons, thanks for everything they do for us. And I want to say that now we are going to need help, because because war is going, and only support other countries help us to win in this war.
Thank you so much. Vadim, would you like to go next?
Okay. I agree with another student, and history showed to us after First War, without world support, we didn't stay. And now, if we didn't stay so long, Europe and another country didn't help us. Because why? It's my opinion.
Thank you. And last but not least, Yaroslav, would you like to go next?
So I support the UN decision to remove Russia from the UN Council, because all this time Russia has been acting against and rejecting all moves of UN towards the solving of this conflict in Ukraine. So that's my answer. Thank you. I want to thank all countries, Western civilization, that provides us help, support, and huge financial support that we really need their help, their aid in this terrible struggle.
Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Durback.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank both Valeriia and Marta and Yaroslav and Vadim for sharing with us your experiences and your hopes. I am very, very grateful that you were able to come and let us know the experiences from your perspective and your observation. I also want to thank Susie Halak for the hosting, and try to have a good week and take good care of yourself. Goodbye.